Welcome to the Bank First Ranger Hour. Super Talk Mississippi 93.7 Spotlight on Northwest Community College. And you can listen to our live stream at supertalknorthms.com. Just click on the link for the Bank First Ranger Hour. Now, here's your host, Gary Darby.
Get things started. Now we're underway. It is the Bank First Ranger Hour, a Thursday edition of the program called North Mississippi Spotlight. And on Thursdays, we discuss everything in the world of Northwest Community College. We'll do so on this November 7th, 2024. Today's guests, we will go to theater instructor and friend Alyssa Algee. She'll join us in to talk about a few things happening in the world of theater and the Department of Fine Arts Northwest. And when done there, we move into the field of play athletically with the Sports Information Director, Brian Lentz, who is out on the road and covering a few different sports along the way. The Ranger women's soccer team is out and trying to continue an unbeaten season. Basketball is on the road. Football gearing up for a Saturday playoff game. We have a lot of things to discuss with Brian on this morning's program, and we will do that in the second half of things. All right, look, they are already announcing some of the spring things that are going on at the Heindel Center for the Performing Arts. The next thing that's happening comes up in 10 days when the Vienna Boys Choir comes to Senatobia and the Northwest Campus and the Heindel Center for the Performing Arts. Then in December, the Celtic Woman White Christmas Symphony Tour shows up. That's December 10. 5 days after that, It's a Wonderful Life film series will go on. So a lot of holiday stuff coming up at the Heindel Center, too. And if you're looking for gifts and things, maybe early presents that you could pass along, you go to heindelcenter.org. It's kind of simple. I'm doing it as we speak. You go to heindelcenter.org, you click on events and tickets, you find the calendar, or you go where you want, you buy that ticket. You can still buy season tickets. You can buy a gift card. And do what you want. Plan your visit to be at the Heindel Center for the Performing Arts. And they've also been, with our good buddy Blake Bostic, putting up, what's coming up in spring. They kind of do some Monday releases along the way and let you know who's showing up. They've had Lee Bryce, and he will be one of the ones coming up in the spring. The spring 2025 season tickets go on sale on November the 18th. Ticket packages go on sale December 2nd. Individual show tickets go on sale December 9th. So you have Lee Bryce, You, Me, and My Guitar coming up. You also have the Beach Boys that will be in February on the 22nd. On a Saturday night at 7:30, and Lee Bryce will be coming in on February the 15th at 7:30. So they're kind of releasing things every so often. We ought to be getting another release as to what is coming up next in the world of the Heindel Center for the spring. And those tickets, again, almost ready to go on sale for the spring season, as that will actually, as I mentioned, start coming up November the 18th for season tickets for spring 25. Ticket packages on sale December 2nd, and individual show tickets on sale December 9. And there are many more announcements to come as to who will be the rest of the spring. You can pick and choose and enjoy some entertainment at the Heindel Center for the Performing Arts, heindelcenter.org. Today's show is underway. We called it the Bank First Ranger Hour. Next up, we're going to get into the theater in the Fine Arts Department, then sports. Then we'll turn you back into Super Talk Radio the rest of the way with Mr. Gerard Gibbert and company and everything else that will happen in the Super Talk world. It's 9:15 on your Thursday. Thanks for listening.
This hour is Everything Northwest, your connection to Northwest Mississippi Community College, and powered by Bank First. Thanks for joining us on the Bank First Ranger Hour. Join the conversation now by texting 662-426-1093.
Next up, we get into everything in the athletic world with Brian Lentz, Sports Information Director. But now we bring in our friend from the Fine Arts Department, theater instructor Alyssa Algee is back on with us. How you doing, lady?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing good. We've had a nice conversation early. And I do this before we get into your production, things that are going on, what may be coming up in the spring. Proud dad moment last night and nervous dad moment at the same time. You know, as I was talking with you, I sang later in life in church and did a few things performance-wise, but was behind the scenes in anything theater. I did some lighting, I did some other things in productions at the Panola Playhouse a couple of times. But my fifth grader, he's trying to find his niche. He's trying to do something, and he tried out for the middle school musical. It is Shrek Jr., and I told him that his lack of height was going to pay off for him at some point and time. And so he is Shrek Jr. as a 7-year-old. At the beginning of the performance, he is the shoemaker's elf, and he comes out as the dwarf, which turns out to be the king's dad, as if you've ever watched Shrek and Shrek Jr. I didn't, I went into the performance just wanting to see what he did, but then all of a sudden, he's the first one that comes out on stage, turns his back to everybody, and I'm nervous as I can be, Alyssa. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to get up there with him. I wanted to jump around and do all this stuff, but it was a very proud moment to do that, and now I kind of know, maybe what some of the other parents have even said prior. They said, it can be nerve-wracking at times, but it was such a pleasure getting to watch them, and I will admit, I was impressed with the youngsters who they found in this production who fit the role of Donkey, who fit the role of Pinocchio, at a very young age. And It was really impressive. When were you first on stage?
Oh, that was a while ago. I actually feel like I started a little bit late, actually. I always loved, there was this one old PBS special play that had been recorded on VHS that I watched on VCR over and over again when I was a kid. And it was a production of Cinderella starring Leslie Ann Warren. Mm-hmm. And I watched it over and over again. And then auditions, I saw a poster for auditions for that show at Panola Playhouse when I was 15. And that's the first show I ever did.
Wow. He's at a point, too, where, he's trying to gain a little weight, trying to grow a little bit. He weighs himself off, and he's like, Dad, I lost a pound this week, jumping around and doing the things in the costumes. And it was interesting because he's got to put the green paint on the face. They get him off. They've got to, get all that off him. He changes costumes 2 or 3 times throughout. And so I know we've talked about these things. I know I've been around these things, but a lot of times maybe we don't think about what the performer and how important the people off the stage actually are to a performance.
They are integral. I mean, they really are. Without them backstage, the actors cannot do their jobs. And Shrek is one of those. I've been a part of it several times, and it's one of those. It is so high energy the entire show, and there are no tiny roles. Everybody is so important. I mean, even just having the dwarf dad come in at the end to reemphasize that point that Lord Farquaad is a hypocrite. It's just the best thing. I love that show. It's a great show. But the crew, they are key.
Sure. They wheel out, some scenery on the stage. They help you change. They do the different things. It was impressive. I've got 2 more nights of it, so maybe I won't be as nervous tonight as I was last night,
Well, if you're anything like me, and these aren't even my blood children, that doesn't go away.
All right, we're doing a Doll's House at Northwest, correct?
Yes, we are, yes.
Fill us in. What is a Doll's House?
A Doll's House is a play written by Henrik Ibsen. It's actually one of the turn of the tide of theater plays, because this was a play that was written at a time when we're moving out of the larger-than-life styles of theater. We're moving away from Greek, we're moving away from Shakespearean, and we're starting to see subject matter that was more relevant to the everyday person, and starting to see subjects that are not about gods and queens and, just love and things like that. No, these are about marital issues and social situations and life, and it became really, really relatable to the everyday man who's watching the show. And so much so, Henrik Ibsen's play originally premiered in 1890s, 19-teens, in a time when those types of social situations were not discussed at all. And as a result, his play, when it was originally produced, was censored by the government, and he wasn't allowed to produce it in its original format. And so it's one that I've always loved, to kind of show that evolution of theater throughout history and moving into that realism. And we just had the right cast this year. We had the right group this year, and we finally got to produce it, and I am so excited. And it follows a family who, at a time when social situations are very different than they are now, women do not have the rights that they have now, to be a woman alone, independent, making your own way, getting your own job, and all of that was just not done. And to do that was to become a social pariah. You were provided for by the men in your family and your husband. And this is a time when this play follows a woman as she decides to make that tough choice, and she decides that the consequences are worth it. And it's a drama, and it's a little heavy, but it is a phenomenal show, and it's always been one that I've loved.
When did you see this performed?
Well, I read it in school when I was an undergraduate. And then I found a production of it online that through the library database, the Northwest Library database, because I wanted to show a version of it to my theater appreciation class back when I started teaching 11 years ago. And I show it now every single semester. It's one of my favorite productions, and it's the most interesting thing to me about it is every character in the show is flawed. And every character in the show has something that you can identify with, no matter what they're doing. And no matter their role in this production, you can identify with who they are, because this is how they were brought up. They're not intrinsically good, bad, or anything. They're just products of their social upbringing. And so at the end of the show, when you get to that climactic moment and it's over and everything's happened, the debates that happen between my students are priceless. Everyone is on a different side. Everyone has their own opinion. Some think this and some think this and it's so beneficial, and it's so interesting, and it's the type of play where nobody's wrong. Everybody's opinion is right.
It might be entertaining to listen to the students just talk at the end, right?
Yes, I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to that once we open. I get to stand in the lobby and listen to people talk about it as they walk out.
So I know you know your students, especially those that have been in performances and that you've worked with or taught before. Mm-hmm. Does it make it easier for you to put them in roles in something like this in a doll's house?
Yes
and no.
Yes and no, because on one hand, one of the big things that we always consider, especially when doing a role like this is a text-based play. This is not action-packed and musical-driven. It's text. It's a lot of dialogue. And so one of the first things I have to consider is, do I have students who can take that on, learn all of that, get it in their head, be dedicated and disciplined enough to memorize all of that? And we did. We really did. Our lead this year, she is the epitome of dedication, and she has led this cast with her example. And without her, this show would not have happened. It would not have happened.
We start this tomorrow. Give the dates and times if you don't mind.
I will, absolutely. We open tomorrow night. We'll show Fridays and Saturdays at 7 o'clock for the next 2 weeks, and Sundays at 2 p.m.
And general admission tickets are $10. Students admission free with a valid student ID. We want you to go to northwestms.edu. There's a story up as well about this in the news column if you want to do it. I understand that there's some work going on in and around that may give you more space, so to speak, there in the Fine Arts Auditorium and in and around that building. Is that correct?
That's correct. We are so excited, and we are so grateful to our administration, Dr. Heindel and Horton and Dr. Domas. They've just worked so hard to make this happen, and we are getting a full education side renovation. Our education building is going to be completely renovated. We're getting a brand new makeup dressing room. We're getting a brand new costume storage room. We're getting a brand new black box theater, so we'll have 2 performance spaces now. One will be nice and small and intimate and be great for these types of small shows, and then we'll be able to continue to use the Northwest Auditorium for our large-scale epic musicals, and we can't wait, and it starts this summer.
Good for you guys. I know it's a long time coming to get that. So before I let you go, are we already working on something for the spring?
Oh, yes, we are. It's a big one. So we actually have 2 things coming up. On December 9th and 10th, we're doing the Holiday Showcase, which is our musical theater students' final performance of the year. And that's at 7 o'clock in the auditorium as well. And we have just completed auditions and are about to start working on Little Shop of Horrors.
Gotcha.
And that's happening next April.
Excellent. So we look forward to talking with you about that when it gets a little bit closer to time. Hang in there. I may be sending you a student one of these days.
Hey, I'll take him.
Versatile and short, right? That's
right.
where we are. All right.
Yes.
Look, I always thank you for your time, and I appreciate that again. If you don't mind, one last time before we leave, tell the people the dates, the times, and where to see A Doll's House.
Come see A Doll's House at Northwest Community Theater at the Northwest Fine Arts Auditorium on campus, November 8th through 15th at 7 o'clock and 2 o'clock.
Thank you, ma'am. Have a good day.
Thank you. Great talking to you.
Alyssa Algee with us, theater instructor there at Northwest Community College. A Doll's House. As she said, kind of interesting because, as I went looking at the story that I mentioned that's at northwestms.edu, the play's premiere was in December of 1879. Now, there's multiple adaptations and runs of the story, and I know that she will have her mark on this performance as well, and the students that are doing the performing the same. They'll be, putting their own mark on the story and the character of Nora in A Doll's House. But as you go and you check it out, as she said, right, usually things were more Shakespearean, kings, queens, things of that nature, and all of a sudden you get into the fact that we're talking about women's rights. You're talking about doing things apart from your husband, doing things that you want, and all throughout, realizing different things in life. And then eventually it's been where we can talk about those things and have a performance like this. Early on, as she said, it was kind of suppressed a little bit, and now you get the opportunity to see it here in 2024, again at Northwest Community College, there in the Fine Arts Auditorium. Tomorrow night, 7, Saturday at 7, 2 matinee shows at 2 on Sunday as well. So that's coming up for the next couple of weekends. General admission seats, $10. Student admission is free with a valid student ID. You can learn more about Northwest Theater, northwestms.edu. Go find the programs, go find everything else. Next thing you know, boom, you found all the information. You can go to Northwest again and ms.edu, look at news, and in the news, you see the press release about A Doll's House and some quotes from Alyssa, who just joined us on the program again today. Good stuff. That's right. Nervous dad last night, watching the little fella get out on stage and do his thing with some older kids in the Oxford Middle School area. Great stuff. All right, friends, coming back, we're going to get into a little bit of everything. Brian Lentz, Sports Information Director, will be with us. We will talk to him next.
Thanks for listening to the Bank First Ranger Hour, your connection to Northwest Mississippi Community College on Super Talk Mississippi 93.7 and streaming live at supertalknorthms.com. Just click on the link for the Bank First Ranger Hour.
Today's Bank First Ranger Hour continues with our friend and your sports information director, Brian Lentz, joins in on the conversation now. Brian, you doing okay?
Doing well, Gary. Just heading down for soccer today in the postseason. I'm sure we'll talk about that here in a little bit, but it's a busy time for Northwest sports with everything getting started.
Absolutely. You people will understand what Brian's talking about as we continue this conversation here. But I do want to start with a sport that ended. Let's recap volleyball just a little bit. You know, they hosted the Region 23 tournament. Give some overall thoughts of what Coach Burchett and this volleyball squad did.
Of course. Well, it was heartbreaking end to what was otherwise a spectacular season for Coach Burchett and her squad. Back-to-back 20-win seasons, and in fact, they went undefeated on the home floor in the regular season this year. Finished 25-9 overall, 10-0 record through the regular season at Howard Coliseum. That alone is an accomplishment just in general, and really getting the conference's first true championship. It wasn't until this year where volleyball became a sanctioned sport in the MACCC. It was just an independent sport within NJCAA Region 23, but with the addition of Meridian and Jones this year, it became a true full-on conference sport similar to soccer and baseball and, all the other ones that we have in this conference. So being able to win the first regular season conference title was definitely a success. Took a match in the semifinals of the Region 23 tournament against Pearl River, won 3-0. And just ran out of gas to a solid Jones College team in the championship that, if anybody followed broadcasts all year long, they heard me say about Jones, that's a team that's a first-year program that truthfully had not played like a first-year program, played like a veteran squad, even though the roster was made up of pretty much all freshmen. And they wound up winning not only the Region 23 tournament championship, but they've gotten some ranked victories over some opponents in Alabama in non-conference play this season. And so as a result, now they get a chance. They're one win away from going to the national tournament. But circling back to Northwest for a moment and what they were able to do, they had a lot of records broken. A lot of players, especially sophomores, that are going out on a high note in the record books. Layla Dyer probably being the most notable. I mean, she finished with over 2,000 assists in just 2 seasons here at Northwest. And that alone is an accomplishment for her and what she's been able to do since her time here. But she also finished first in career digs with 710. And, I mean, like I said, she was remarkable for Northwest and Coach Burchett and over the last 2 seasons. And she also finished first in career matches played with 76 and career service aces as well, or finished fourth, I should say, in career service aces with 70. So Layla Dyer is all over the record books. Kaya Coleman as well. She's going on to Lincoln Memorial University following Northwest, so she'll continue her career. She finished fifth in career blocks for her time here at Northwest, but had the most this season with 111, and that's a single-season record in that category for Coleman. And then Anna Lott also finishing high up in the blocks category as well. Same thing for Rachel Stegall, William Carey University transfer that came in this year. Had 75 service aces, which finishes second in both the career and single-season categories in the record books, and also finished third in kills for a single season with 314, just behind Maddie Smith, who was a freshman, and finished second in that category. So when you really look down the list and look down the stats at everything that was accomplished this year by Northwest, it was overall a great season and just further sums up the momentum that Coach Burchett has brought to this program over the last couple of years.
Let's go into some basketball. The men have split their first 2 games. The women go down. They're 2-0. They're in Goodman. 5:30, 7 o'clock for the tip-offs of that one tonight. Just quickly on that, just a little bit. Boy, the men, was it a double overtime, 1-point loss, and then they got another win in their first two. So, Coach Oakley there, and then Coach Williams with a good start down in Baton Rouge, getting a couple of wins over some decent teams down there. So it's been a what looks like early fun start. I know we're only 2 games in.
Yeah, and it is. And I'll start with the men first because I think they had a impressive weekend, even though they went 1-1 in the Arkansas State Mid-South Classic last weekend. 108-107 was their double overtime loss to National Park College, who started the year number 16 in the national polls. So if you step back and think about that, Northwest almost beat a nationally ranked team to open the season. I don't know the last time I've been able to say that involving the Ranger men. Now, they've played some nationally ranked teams in the regular season through the NWCC, and, over the years they've occasionally picked up a win or two here and there, but to open the season in your very first game where you're supposed to be shaking off the cobwebs, kind of finding your chemistry still and your routine and all that, to only lose by 1 point in double overtime to a team like National Park, that alone is impressive. And there's a lot of positive takeaways you can take from that, especially when you turned around the next night and beat ASU Mid-South by 20 points on their home floor. So I think it's a bright future coming up for Northwest. Of course, I still have yet to see them in person because of the fact that we had football and volleyball going on this past weekend. But just seeing what I saw on paper alone, Dorian Booker debuting for Northwest, getting 21 points and 12 rebounds in that first game. And then Zoe Nicholas, a returning sophomore, getting 28 points and averaging over 20 points for those 2 games that Northwest had. That alone is remarkable in that sense. And flipping over to the women's side, because they certainly had a lot to talk about as well, sweeping the competition in Baton Rouge against Shorter College and, of course, the host Baton Rouge Community College. And Alorian Story, freshman from Ripley, coming out and averaging a double-double in those 2 games to get MACCC Women's Basketball Player of the Week. And the reason that's so big for Coach Williams and really for Story herself is that she's the first women's basketball player to get a Conference Player of the Week honor since 2022.
Really?
So it's been a while since Northwest has had a women's player get a Conference Player of the Week award, and she does it in her first week. And it's not just her. Aaliyah Taylor, transfer in from Connors State College, who went to the national tournament last year as well. She played well for Northwest, as did Mariah Reed-Jones. So Coach Laterrell Williams and his squad, they also have a pretty balanced roster, it seems, at least through these first 2 games. And we'll find out a little bit more about what both basketball teams have. But I'd say right now, Northwest basketball's looking like they're going to be a pretty fun team to watch on both sides this season.
5:30, 7:30 tonight in Goodman against Holmes. Not a conference game. The next games for those 2 teams at home will be on Monday night, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Well, the women will actually play Monday night. It'll just be a women's game against Bishop State.
Gotcha.
Now, their first doubleheader at home will come on November 14th, and that's when you'll have Coahoma come here for a 5:30, 7:30 p.m. twin bill. So either way, they do the women at least open up on the home floor on Monday, November 11th.
Brian Lentz is with us, Sports Information Director at Northwest Community College on today's Bank First Ranger Hour. The Magic season continues. Region 23, you're in Ellisville for soccer, right? Right.
And you're right. Magic sums it up to a T for Coach James Beatty and his squad. 16-0, 11-0 in the conference. The final women's soccer rankings came out last week, and Northwest has held on to that number 1 ranking from the time the preseason polls were released all the way through the final regular season poll. And, considering what Northwest had to face this season, they had no shortage of ranked opponents that they went up against. In fact, I'm looking at several, not just in the conference, but out of conference as well. And to say that Northwest went through that whole schedule, finishing the regular season without a single loss or a single draw, that is impressive. And it's just something that Coach Beatty continues with his teams. They just get better and better every year. And every year, just when I think it can't get any better than what they did the year before, he always has a group of freshmen that are ready to step up and just surprise me. I mean, Emma Jensen has been big for Northwest this season, the team's leading scorer, 16 goals. She is out of Germany. And then you have Caroline Ham out of Saltillo that's right behind her, scoring as well. I mean, you think about all the sophomores Northwest had coming back, especially on offense, and you would think that they would be the team's leading scorers going into this year. People like MJ Delgado, who is still very important to this squad. But then you look and see the freshmen that are emerging as the most notable strikers for his team, and you just start looking ahead a little bit, or you find yourself looking ahead and going, I wonder what he's got up his sleeve for next year, because it really is year to year. Coach Beatty and his squad have been able to not only replicate but even surpass some of the talent that they lose from the years prior. And the best part about it is it's not over yet. You know, they start the semifinals later today, in fact, at 11 a.m. in the Region 23 tournament against Itawamba. Now, Itawamba is a team they beat 5-1 in the regular season, but ICC is coming off a quarterfinal victory over Jones, in which they went to penalty kicks and advanced on penalty kicks against Jones. And Jones was the defending national champion, and Jones was still nationally ranked as well. So ICC is certainly not going to be a cakewalk for Northwest to get past, and neither will Holmes or Pearl River, whoever wins that next semifinal matchup. But hopefully, if everything goes smoothly, Northwest will be playing for another Region 23 title on Saturday. That'll be at 2 p.m. in Ellisville. JCBobcats.com is where you can watch that particular match. I will be there, but it won't be on Ranger TV because we have football going on. But at least Jones College will be streaming all the soccer matches that go on down there.
Let's get into football. We changed the schedule, right? Saturday, number 4 Northwest, number 5 Mississippi Gulf Coast, first round of the conference football playoffs. It will be 2:00, correct?
Correct, 2:00.
2:00 on Saturday. So tell us, Northwest played the other two teams who will also play at 2 in Decatur, and that's number 8 East Central, number 12 Holmes. But tell us a little bit about Gulf Coast.
Well, Gulf Coast is a team that, I mean, really other than a loss to East Central, that's how they finished as the number 2 team in the South Division instead of number 1. But they've looked good all year long. And it's a team that has a lot of weapons on both sides of the ball, but of course you can say the same thing about Northwest. And I think the best thing that really sums it up from talking to my colleagues around the rest of the conference this year is that this is probably the first year in a very long time where the conference has just been wide open. And I mean, you take a look, Jones is not in the playoffs, East Mississippi is not in the playoffs. You don't see Colin, who was in the playoffs last year and made it to the championship game in the conference. They're not in the postseason this year. So you really kind of look around and think to yourself, I mean, when you look week to week at how everybody's played, this is as wide open as it gets. So, I mean, I know it sounds cliche to say, but, I mean, it could be 50-50 on Saturday between Northwest and Gulf Coast. I think the biggest key for Northwest, though, they got to play a complete sound game of football. There's really only been one game that they've been able to play from the time of kickoff to the final horn, and that was East Mississippi. Otherwise, pretty much every other matchup this year for Northwest has been a tale of two halves. The Rangers will either come out strong in the first half, lose a little gas in the second half, and allow the opponents to come back in it, or in the case of our most recent game at ICC, Northwest down 10-3 at halftime. They score 40 points unanswered and wind up winning the game. So it's just been a little bit of back and forth. You know, which Northwest team are we going to see, and will we see it for all 4 quarters? I think that's going to be the biggest key and the biggest question going into this game.
How can we watch on Saturday?
Well, there's a couple different ways to watch. Obviously, Ranger TV, NWCCRangers.com/watch is probably going to be your best option. We don't have our usual simulcasting partners in the Mississippi Delta for this game, and that's due to Delta State having their homecoming game that will be broadcast on those stations. So The only other way to really watch Northwest football other than Ranger TV, as I mentioned, will be if you have an over-the-air digital box or antenna and live in the Memphis Mid-South market. Channel 5.2, that is Bounce Memphis. It's a sub-channel of Action News 5. We've been on Action News 5 Plus pretty much all year. Scheduling conflicts have us move into that channel for this game. But if anything else, Ranger TV, NWCCRangers.com/watch would be the best way to tune into that game.
Excellent. Be safe driving to all of these events up and down the state of Mississippi. You're great at what you do, and we appreciate some time on this morning's show.
I appreciate it, Gary. Thank you.
Brian Lentz, South Mississippi is where he is right now, getting ready for a little soccer. And then there's basketball that'll go on tonight for NWCC. There's football, as he mentioned, on Saturday at 2. The website is nwccrangers.com if you want to try and keep up with all that's going on in Northwest athletics. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Alyssa, for being on the program. Today, our time is done. We'll pass it on to the rest of the world and the Super Talk news and things that are going on up and down the state of Mississippi with Gerard next. I'm back tomorrow with a look at the high school football games played tonight, preview games playing tomorrow, and the weekend for college.